Sup fam, Ali. This is a sponsored video. Let's get it poppin'. I am Indie Pride from Milk and Cookies Total War, and today we're going to be taking a look at Total War Arena. My god, what a sellout. He's doing a sponsored video. I've gotten literally hundreds of offers for sponsored content over the last few years and only ever done it for 2 games, Vermintide and now Total War Arena. If I didn't enjoy this game, I wouldn't be making a video for it unless it was for an ungodly sum of money, which this is not. My mom says I'm worth a bunch, but I'm not sure anyone else agrees. So we're gonna go through, talk about some of the great aspects of this game, talk about some of the things that I don't like about it, discuss the recent content updates, and basically just show off some gameplay. I think now is a pretty good time to give it a shot if you've never tried it before, or you've just taken a break from it. There's a code in the description below that should give you some in-game currency to help jumpstart the early game for you, if you're interested in marching to war on the battlefields of classical antiquity. So I actually played a lot of the alpha stage, all the way back in 2015, got up to around tier 7, but absolutely adored playing around tier 4 with Alexander's Citizen Cavalry, a unit that is a heck of a lot better in Arena than it ever was in Rome 2, and that's where I found my niche, preying on archer blobs and undefended artillery. And it was actually during that time that I was invited to my first ever creative assembly event, a showcase of Total War Arena at the ESL Studios in Burbank, California. And I'm not kidding when I say it is, to this day, one of my favorite gaming moments of all time. Just everything that's awesome about friendly competition in front of a live audience coalesced into one great event where I got to absolutely wreck people's faces and make game-winning plays like this one.
To send a cap unit over on this side, or the cap will get cut down by this cap charge, and that's what happens.
He's reset the cap. That's what they needed to stop. Indie Pride got around the side there, but is it going to be enough? Frenzy charge in. Indie Pride's going to get wiped out, but while this is all happening, Indie Pride's coming charging in. 18%, that count keeps going back. Bailey's trying to keep them at bay. Everything right now for Warcast is to keep this cap alive. Warrior Sparta's managed to clear out Indie Pride. He's going to get caught once again, and the cap is reset yet again.
And you know what? The fact that it came against my YouTube counterparts from across the pond, like Lionheart, Rambler, and Warrior of Sparta, made it all the sweeter. But fast forward 2.5 years and the free-to-play Total War Arena is now under Wargaming's wing and in open beta. It is an entirely different experience from the ground up compared to other Total War games, and so while it might not necessarily scratch the same itch as a Rome 2 or a Shogun 2 Total War, there's certainly a lot to like there, but there are some drawbacks too. So Total War Arena is a free-to-play 10v10 team-based strategy game that takes the armies of Greece, ancient Rome, Carthage, and the barbarians of Gaul, Britain, and Germania, and plops them into battle arenas where each player takes command of one famous commander and 3 units from history. Each commander has a different playstyle and different roles they can perform on the battlefield. So where Alexander can perform his classic hammer and anvil by pinning a unit in place, then obliterating it from behind with a powerful cavalry charge, Arminius is more about ambushing and finesse, using numerical superiority and favorable terrain to quickly overwhelm opponents that would be tough to beat in a straight-up fight. Each commander has a different set of abilities that synergize more efficiently with a particular unit or playstyle, and as there are 4 different armies, each with dozens of units split into 10 different tiers, there's a lot of content to digest there. On the battlefield, there are control points that grant vision over huge swaths of the map that will be hotly contested, and each team has a base that can be capped, granting an automatic victory to whichever team captures their opponents first. But annihilation victories are obviously the most satisfying way to win, achieved by simply bulldozing every single enemy unit on the map. Everything in Total War Arena, from commander abilities to units, are unlocked as you progress through those 10 separate tiers using XP you earn simply from playing, and the customization and personal touches on offer can satisfy those like me who dearly miss Avatar Conquest. But the question remains, how is that progression? Is it grindy? Is it reasonable? I mean, as a free-to-play game, there's an economy in place where you can use real money to rank up faster and get access to units quicker, but does that throw off game balance in any meaningful way, and ultimately, is it pay to win? I can't speak to other wargaming games because I've never played any of them, and I can't speak to what may or may not be done in the future, but right now, I can objectively say that Total War Arena is not a pay-to-win game. I actually think it's surprisingly well balanced, which isn't to say it's remotely perfect when it comes to unit tiers or commander interactions, but the game is designed so that you match up with people at your general skill level and at your current tier. So you might occasionally see a player with units a tier or 2 higher than you, but that will be countered by someone on your own team at the same level. And just like any other Total War game, pick your engagements wisely and synergize well with the people on your side, and you can crush anything that's thrown your way. If you see someone with slightly more elite units, just wait for support, then gank the crap out of them. You don't need to go in alone. Total War Arena shines brightly in two particular areas. Number one, it can be incredibly fun when you're rolling with a coordinated team or playing with a group of friends over voice chat. The teamwork can be absolutely beautiful and super satisfying when you pull off some complex maneuvers and utterly annihilate a chunk of an enemy army. The great thing about 10v10s is that battles can be really fluid and dynamic, constantly shifting battle lines with feints and retreats, ambushes, manipulation of line of sight, and concerted pushes where your team tries to overload one flank and make a mad dash for the capture point. It can sometimes feel more organic and alive than traditional Total War battlefields because you've got 30 units on the field all being controlled at once, and if the players are any good, being controlled precisely. And that makes for a living, breathing arena that can't always be captured the same way in other games. Which brings me to my next point. The map design is phenomenal. Tons of interesting terrain features, strong points, watchtowers that provide lines of sight that need to be controlled, and brutal choke points contrasted with wide, sweeping plains and dense forest with minimal lines of sight. All make for some really interesting battles, and something I wish vanilla Total Wars would try harder to emulate. Now, obviously, a game like Arena, focused on competitive multiplayer, needs to have good maps to even have a chance at survival, so it's not really a fair comparison, but maps like the ones in Arena, in vanilla Warhammer or the historical Total Wars, would be a dream come true. Each of them are handcrafted and conducive to complex tactics, shifting battle lines and flanking maneuvers that make Arena what it is. And the way the game is set up, there's just so much room for clutch plays and exciting matches where both teams are really close to capping the other team's base, only for defeat to be snatched from the jaws of victory, as you thought you had them where you wanted them, only for a crucial misplay at the end to ruin your chances, or vice versa. As for the grind aspect, there's no question it can take a long time to get multiple commanders up into tiers 8 through 10. That's going to be reserved for people who either want to pay real money to skip all that grind, or put in a hell of a lot of time, effort, and energy with the game. You're not going to be able to play super casually and get Hellenic cataphracts anytime soon. With that said though, you don't need to play the highest tiers to get enjoyment out of this game. In fact, for people just looking for a good time with friends, I recommend not doing that. Like I said, I played at the higher tiers in the alpha, but by far the most fun I had in battles were between tiers 4 and 6, which are entirely achievable without massive amounts of effort as the game currently stands. That may change later on, I don't know, but for right now, those are perfectly achievable. So, to give you some frame of reference, I've played about 10 hours over the last several days and gotten a few commanders up to tier 3, and most of the rest of them up to tier 2. If all that was invested in 1 or 2 commanders, I'd probably be around tier 5 by now. So, definitely a little bit slow on the progression, but not awful either. My understanding is that currently, queue times can be exceptionally long at high tiers though, so at least on the NA server, that might be something you want to keep in mind if you're really liking the game and want to invest some money to skip the earlier tiers and go straight for the heavy hitters. I don't know that there are a massive amount of people playing those high tiers at the moment, so you'll definitely want to keep that in mind. Which brings me to another point. Currently the game is region locked. North America and Europe are on separate servers, so you can't queue with an EU friend if you have an NA account, which I really don't like. I saw on Reddit it's being addressed for the future. Hopefully, and sincerely, I hope that is true, because there are lots of people, myself included, who regularly play with friends from different countries, and the vast majority of people I know who play Arena are from Europe. So I want to have access to those friends, I want to be able to play with them, and it sucks not being able to lobby up with them whenever I feel like it. Being addressed, hopefully. There's nothing truly confirmed, but they did mention on Reddit, so we can hope and dream. So the most important question, one that I think a lot of people are going to want to know, is the core gameplay actually fun? Yeah, I think it is. It certainly got a more arcade feel than traditional Total Wars, in that charging is an activatable ability with cavalry, and while in melee there are short cooldown abilities like Stomp and Shield Bash and Stab, and that might not be everyone's cup of tea, but while you only have 3 units to micro, you have a lot to think about still in terms of troop positioning and when to use your abilities, what engagements you should be taking, and it can make for a pretty cerebral, pretty tactical game, especially when you're using these force multipliers alongside teammates and working in conjunction with each other to try to get a leg up on your opponents. There are some pretty dirty combinations you can employ that add a lot of depth and nuance to the combat that I find pretty enjoyable. I will say, one thing I would really like to see is a 5v5 game mode where each player has 6 units instead of 3. I think it'd make matchmaking queues a lot easier, especially at the higher tiers, and give people looking for more micromanagement and even more stuff to do access to a bigger section of the army and just more stuff to have fun with. That's definitely something I'd like to see going forward. I don't know if it's in the cards or not, but it seems like a pretty logical step to take. And like I said, reducing those queue times for the higher tiers would be pretty useful as well. But what I think would get people really excited is when they start working in different periods of warfare. Now, back in November of 2017 at the Tokyo Game Show, the dev team explicitly stated that feudal Japan was coming to Total War Arena. Now, just for a second, imagine how cool it would be to have Oda Nobunaga and Ieyasu working with early matchlocks, warrior monks, Yari Ashigaru, and Nodachi samurai from the Sengoku Jidai period, while their allies have, let's say, Richard the Lionheart and Frederick Barbarossa leading 12th century knights. And then you've got Zangid and Ayyubid dynasties for Nuruddin and Salahuddin, and all those factions are fighting with and against the armies from classical antiquity that we currently have. The Romans, barbarians, Carthaginians, and Greeks, and all that stuff together, 12th century knights versus Romans, and all the stuff we have in Arena right now versus Sengoku Jidai samurai, I think that would be massively appealing to quite a wide audience, and the ideas for implementation were there even before For Honor came along, so I'd love to see them go down that road. I don't think Arena needs to only be in classical antiquity, although there are certainly plenty of other culture groups from that time period that would work as well. I think Parthians are a prime example there, but yeah, give me some samurai, give me some medieval period units, give me some knights, and I'm going to be a real happy boy. Maybe throw in some pike and shot warfare there too, if you're feeling real spicy. Renaissance warfare would be awesome. But there was actually a new patch for the game that dropped on April 17th that brought a host of new changes that were focused on kind of making melee grinds between units more interactive and benefiting the user experience for people making the transition from the lower to middle tiers. Just a better experience overall for those newer players. So one of the biggest changes made was this concept of strikes. These are new active abilities for all units designed to complement existing combat mechanics. So my tier 3 Germanic cavalry I'm using with Arminius right now, for example, can perform a synchronized mounted kick that knocks over enemies and deals damage. Hoplites can do a shield bash, and Roman legionnaires can perform a synchronized stab with their gladius, and each of these have a better chance to hit if their other offensive capabilities are active as well. By the same token, good timing on defensive abilities can mitigate the damage output from these strikes. So even with a melee grind between two committed units, there's now something to keep you active and thinking about when you want to activate these abilities. Now, they're very low cooldown, so they're not the most tactical, the most strategic of abilities, but there is some timing, and there is some counterplay between offensive and defensive strikes that can make for some counterplay there, which is pretty interesting. Now, missiles have been made more accurate overall to reduce friendly fire from those overzealous teammates who shoot into a blob no matter how many allies are nearby. If you played Arena, especially in the alpha, you know how bad that could hurt. But to balance all that accuracy that they've been granted, and to prevent the archer spam that at least characterized the earlier stages of the alpha, missile damage has been reduced across the board. But I will say, I loved those days of archer spam though. Playing cavalry in those lobbies was absolutely glorious. Just so many snacks to crunch on with Alexander hammer charges. But I haven't really run into archer spam or range spam very much in my battles of lowest tiers in the open beta. Most army compositions I've run into from enemy players have been pretty well balanced. There's also a new camera with increased height, so you can see more of the battlefield now, which is pretty nice. Apparently a lot of people were looking forward to that. And friendly fire has been redesigned to teach newer players gradually the downsides of making pincushions out of your teammates. It's more forgiving at lower tiers, so at tier 1, there's a 50% reduction in the amount of friendly fire damage you do, and at tier 3, it goes down to 15% reduction, and I believe above that, it gets rid of that reduction completely. So basically, the lower tier you're at, the less friendly fire damage you do, but that ramps up, and it's a far cry overall, though, from the absolute evisceration you could do to your party back on the alpha. They made friendly fire, in general, a lot more forgiving than what I remember, including your deployables not wrecking allies anymore. So if you run your cavalry over an ally's stakes, you won't skewer them like you used to do, which you could say is a good or bad thing. Personally, I think it's kind of better. if people just watch their positioning, but at the same time, if your teammate's an idiot and has absolutely no idea what they're doing, it's kind of understandable. You don't want to lose 1,000,000 points just because they didn't know what they were doing there. So I guess I understand it both ways. Now, there is one more sponsored video for Total War Arena coming as part of this contract, and that one will be less of an overview and more just me having some fun with the game. But there is certainly a lot of fun to be had here, especially if you've got a group of people you like to play with and talk to. You can play solo. I've had plenty of fun solo, but the game is undoubtedly better when you're in a group of people that you enjoy playing with. It's not a perfect game by any means, and it's not going to be for everybody. It doesn't have the cinematic beauty or the campaign elements that made so many people fall in love with the traditional Total War series, but it does offer a really interesting competitive multiplayer outlet along the same vein as Avatar Conquest from Shogun 2. It does offer some pretty deep customization and personalization, which will only grow more robust going forward, and the core gameplay is simply entertaining for me, as someone who likes multiplayer and regular Total War games, and someone who enjoys battle arena games like Dota 2. The game's just fun, and I think it's a pretty important component if you want to get new customers. So be sure to use that PLAYTWA code for the 7 days of premium and 500 gold if you're thinking about giving Arena a shot. And I'll see you all in the next video. Indie Pride, signing out for now.